The Digital Photography Cafe show is brought to you by Focus Pyramid, the autofocus lens calibration tool for your camera.
Welcome to the Digital Photography Cafe show. Join hosts Trevor Current and Joseph Christina as they serve up the hottest photography news and commentary.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is episode 149. I'm Joseph Christina here with my co-host Trevor Current. On last week's episode, we talked about an iOS 7 security flaw, 12 million downloads of Microsoft Office for iPad, how to use Google Docs as a desktop suite, and a brand new Kickstarter project from the makers of Lensbaby. If you haven't watched last week's show, I encourage you to do so. You can find it at digitalphotographycafe.com and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thephotocafe. Listen with the popular Stitcher, TuneIn, and Xbox Music apps, or subscribe through iTunes or RSS.
So, Joe, we're back. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Another week.
Another week, yes. Episode 149. We're making these, keeping them going, man.
That's right. Making
Next
progress.
Next week is 150. Jeez.
Yep. 1,000 right around the corner.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be there in another month.
Yep. Be like an old man by then.
That's right.
So let's get right into it. As we've told you guys, we want to kind of blast through these shows. We're trying to make them 30 minutes or less to kind of give you as much information as quick as possible.
That's right. Yeah, so let's start off with some emails that we received this week. And I want to personally give a big shout out to Greg V. He actually emailed the morning of recording this show, just wishing me, back on the show, and he's glad to hear me and everything, and really appreciate it. So, Greg, thank you. I'm feeling good. I'm glad to be back, and we're going to keep cranking away with these shows.
That's right.
Got another one from a man by the name of Joe Disher, and he actually is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Drobo.
Right.
So, which is kind of cool because he was listening to our show, episode 147, when we were talking about the Gen 3 Drobo. And, Joe and I were kind of talking back and forth about some different things, and we were kind of posing some questions that we really didn't have answers to. So it was really cool. He emailed back with some answers. So that's awesome.
Yeah, very, very cool. And basically, it's the gist behind it is the Drobo proprietary, is it not, and how it works, how it doesn't work. But the one thing that I really like is, like we said in the last show, that you can go from your Gen 1, Gen 2 to a Gen 3, which was an answer to one of our questions.
Yeah, that was one of the questions.
That's great for you.
Yeah, because I'm running two Gen 1 Drobos with my drives, and the question was, if my enclosure died, would I be out of luck?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. I can actually take the drives out of the Gen 1, put it into the Gen 3, and get back up and running. So that is really good news.
Right. And then he was going into how RAID, they're using a RAID algorithm. They're using, I think it's RAID 1, 5, and 6, and some derivative thereof or whatnot. And he was saying how that's not proprietary. And he was talking about Beyond RAID, what they use. And they're saying that it wasn't proprietary. Well, I mean, let's put it this way. As far as I understand, Beyond RAID is proprietary. It's not a non-proprietary type of thing. What it is a layer, and that layer is proprietary. It's using like a VM or some type of virtualization to be able to do the management of the RAID that's going on in the background. So that's what I understand from it. So is it proprietary? Is Drobo's, format or whatnot proprietary? In a way, yes, it is, because all RAID arrays are going to be in somehow, shape, or form proprietary to that specific organization or company who created it, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it exactly. So they're using RAID 1, what did they say? RAID
5
1,
and 6,
5 and 6 techniques. Right. So the underlying functionality of the RAID device is not proprietary. That's standard. That's what the industry is using. But yes, they did create this virtualization layer utilizing their software in order to be able to have the capabilities of the redundant, the backups, the instant expandability, and the rebuilding, the healing processes that the Drobo does. So of course that part is proprietary. That's their own mix. And anybody that produces a RAID is going to have some form of software running it. And
Right.
each company has their own flavor here. So yes, that is going to be proprietary. But he did say that should you have an enclosure failure where the thing just dies, short of buying another enclosure, now that we know that you could pop these drives into a Gen 3, you could send the drives to Drive Savers or the Data Rescue Center. He named just as two of them, and they would be able to retrieve the data from them. So as far as my understanding goes, the data that's written to the drive is not necessarily in a proprietary format.
Right.
The management of how the data is written to the drive is where the proprietary comes in.
Right. I don't understand how they'll be able to recover that data if it's written, sliced across 5-6 drive. But regardless, if he says that you can, then, I have to take him for his word on it and say, yeah, absolutely.
Well, sure.
You can
we're not
recover it.
engineers by any means,
Exactly. Now, is there other alternatives to Drobo that does, the same type of thing of this instance expandability and, yes. There's something called FreeNAS that's been around forever. It's like an open source type of application. NAS stands for Network Attached Storage, if you guys didn't know. FreeNAS is just simply a layer. It's another application that runs on a PC that you set up to be your RAID array. And it is, let's say, your way of communicating with the RAID. So it is the software backing, and that's FreeNAS.
Right.
There's also one that's... it's AMAHI. That's another one. You can go to amahi.org. It does similar type of thing, doing a RAID array. It is a software. It's using gray hole technology, which is just another technology. Whereas FreeNAS uses, I think it does pools. It's doing ZFS. They're just different architectures of doing RAID, basically the same type of thing. Now, for me, if you're a techie guy, well, I mean, I would say, install like VMware or something similar to that. Virtualize a little portion of your drive and then be able to install some of these free applications to go and do RAID and do some testing on RAIDs to see if you like it. And then finally, if you do, then go install it on a box. But if you're not techie, Drobo is just a great alternative to that because it's just, they've already figured it out. They've done it. They've created that virtualization, that VM or that virtualization layer for you, which is that communication to the RAID and doing all the back-end stuff for you already. So I am, you know how I am. You used RAID. I use G drives and I pile them up and I have them set up in mirroring. I just, mirror 4 gigs to another 4 gigs, mirror 2 gigs or 8 gigs to another 2 gigs. So that's how I do it. I like to be able to access my data at any given time. I will stripe those G drives, so I get extremely fast access, but the actual mirroring is done external. Like you were saying, there's software that does it. You could either have software doing it, or you could have software that's on firmware that does it. And in a true RAID array, you would have a card. As inside a Drobo, I'm sure they have a hardware card that's running this RAID, whereas if you were to use FreeNAS or something like that, you would purchase a RAID card. And then the FreeNAS is just your, let's say, your GUI, your layer that goes and allows you to access that storage device setup. So, anyways, there's a lot more technology, tech goes into.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not for the faint of heart. And it's probably not for the photography show, but just want to let you know that, it's just thank you over there at Drobo for getting back to us, answering our questions, and this way we can kind of get back to you, with the current knowledge from them. I mean, that's fantastic.
The clarification.
I love it. Yeah, just to be able to clarify everything. So,
and it's awesome. It's nice to know Drobo's listening. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So moving on. Windows XP. If anyone has Windows XP, well, it's time to dump it. As of like last week or last month, they said, hey, it's long in the tooth. It's 12 years old. We're moving forward, and we are no longer supporting it. Microsoft said that's it. No more updates, no more security, no more blah, 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 blah. If you are using XP, it's time to get rid of it. They tell you to either buy a new machine or buy a new OS, the latest and greatest. So
But
And
you
it's
may
funny.
not be able to run one of the latest and greatest OSs on
That's why they say buy a new
that's 12
machine.
years old. That was originally came with XP. So
Yeah, and that's what
You
they
know.
said. It's time to buy a new machine. And they actually
Time
give a
to
link.
upgrade.
If you have an XP machine and it comes up, they give you a link to Microsoft Store where you can actually buy machines that they recommend, let's say, or at good deals from all different manufacturers right on their store to
Right.
get you the latest, Windows 8.1, I think it is now, or something. So not really, I am kind of agnostic over here. I do run Unix as I am like a system administrator. I do run Windows, different Windows installs, as well as everyone that I'm a Mac guy. So I'm like the tech nerd.
yeah.
So, anyways, moving forward, Adobe back, right?
Yeah. Camera Raw 8.4 and Lightroom 5.4 is now available.
Yay!
Camera Raw, I mean, that's great. Obviously, if you need to update your compatibility with your Photoshops and such, but Lightroom 5.4 actually is adding a new feature, which is mobile compatibility,
Right.
which is quite interesting, and we'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, I know, Joe, you just updated to 5.4, right?
Yeah, just updated from 5.3 to 5.4. I just like to stay up to date in the studio, so we have everything current. Is there anything really big in this update? No, like you said, it's mobile friendly now. We'll talk about that later. It does some fixes to the original 5. It also adds camera support. It does like Nikon, the 4DS, as well as some Fujis. And one thing that I liked is we're always talking about these quadcopters, right? It adds the DJI, I think it is, Phantom, which is a quadcopter format. So that's pretty cool. So obviously quadcopters are now, on the forefront of updates in Lightroom, which is kind of, Lightroom compatibility. So it's really cool. They're moving
It is
forward.
cool. I mean, who really would have thought it,
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought that something that could be perceived as a toy would actually now be worked on in the professional space. So that's
Mainstream.
pretty cool.
Yeah, so they added a whole bunch of different cameras to it, from Canon to Fuji to Hassi to Nikon, Olympus, Panasonic, on and on, to some Phase 1s and Sony.
Yep.
The thing is the thing that makes me think about this all the time is this compatibility and why we need to do this. I really do think that eventually there needs to be some open source or some open format of RAW that all cameras will use, instead of having 100 different RAW versions, let's call them, because it's all the same. It's just how you read the data. You're still pumping in the same ones and zeros, but this proprietary format that you're constantly having to get the latest and greatest to be able to access, because we know if you go and buy the latest camera, chances are you're not going to be able to read your RAW files unless you use the software that you won't be able to read them through Lightroom or through Adobe package. And then eventually you'll be able to read them, but you'll have to go and move them from that RAW format to a DNG format using their converter, which is then a pain also, until finally they come up with the new update of Lightroom. So it's problematic.
I mean, if all the manufacturers just use, let's say, the DNG format, that would make life a lot easier.
Right.
But the DNG format is kind of built and maintained by Adobe. So now Canon would be locking themselves in with Adobe to make sure that they maintain that DNG format. And
that's why I say they need to come up with...
I see why they do it, but that is what they need to do.
Right. They need to come up with an open...
friendly.
Yeah, they need to come up with an open, like an open source version of it, something that's non-proprietary to no one, including Adobe, and that would be great. And then just every camera would use it, nice and simple. So we were talking about Lightroom going mobile, and it does, and it's really kind of neat. You can use the Lightroom Mobile on your iPad right now, not an Android device yet, but it is pretty cool, right?
Yeah. So this is where the mobile support for 5.4 comes in. It allows syncing of your Lightroom images from your desktop to your iPad.
Right.
The catch here is you need to have an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription.
Right.
So if you've been buying the standalone versions of Lightroom and you go and download this app, it's not going to work. You're going to need that subscription, which, is kind of a bummer, but you have to think about it. They need to store that syncing information somewhere,
Right.
And unless they were doing a point-to-point, a peer-to-peer, where they were going from the mobile device to your specific desktop computer or laptop computer where Lightroom was running, the only way to do it is through the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, they could use, cloud is cloud these days, using their cloud or using Google's cloud or using your own cloud that's sitting in your closet is viable also, using like we were talking about with like a NAS type of setup. Right. You can have a cloud, in your closet. So they are making it so you have to use Adobe CC, and rightfully so, because they want you in that CC environment. If you do like we have 5.3, Lightroom 5.3, and go to 5.4, it will not have the ability to use this Lightroom Mobile. So even though we do have 5.4, and it does come with that ability, we do not have access to it because we do not have the Creative Cloud as of yet in the studio, CC. So,
but this is typical in software development. What makes you want to upgrade to the next version of software? Well, it's all those great features and
bells and
new
whistles
functionality. And,
absolutely.
They're banking on that people will really love the idea of this syncing, that they'll just forego the standalone versions and upgrade to Creative Cloud, because that's where they're really making their money.
Okay,
we talked about that in the past. So.
Yeah, so like whittling down the syncing thing, it's really not, let's say, syncing of like raw files onto your iPad. What it's doing is taking let's say a 30 gig raw file, converting it into a smaller, like almost like a DNG, maybe 1 meg out of the 30. So, and then those are the files that you're actually working with on the iPad. So what can you do with it? Well, you could do color corrections, but you really don't want to, because now you're using a file that's extremely small with not all the data on it. But what I would do with
you're counting on your iPad screen to be color calibrated to print.
Right. Exactly. I would do
most likely it's not.
So the main thing that you're going to do with this, guys, is selection. You could do, you could do color correction. You can do exposure. You might want to do a little bit of exposure. You could do some cropping or whatnot. But the main thing, the reason for using this is for selection, and be able to do selection sitting on a couch somewhere in comparison to behind the computer. The problem that I have with this is, bear in mind, it's writing. These changes are being written as XML, like small little updates. So you're not really changing pixels, guys. You're actually just changing a recipe, like in a cookbook. You're changing the recipe so that when you go back to the computer, it loads up that recipe for that specific image, and it makes the modifications, which are non-destructive through Lightroom. That's simply what it's doing. It's very, very straightforward. The problem that I have is it does like an all or nothing. It's either a yes or a no. It uses the flag or unflag technique of selection. Well, most pros don't use that type of selection. We normally use a star base. So what we'll do is we'll come in, let's say there's 1,000 pictures, whittle it down to all single stars. So when we might get down to 500. Then we'll whittle those 500 down to, let's say, 250 with 2 stars, and then look at the 250 and then really hone it down to 3 stars. And then we'll use 4 stars for the client. The client will select the 4 stars or whatever they want. And then the 5 stars is what I use for going to print. That will be press ready material. That's just how I do it. It's a lot of pros do it this way because it's a way to really whittle it down, because so many times you'll have the exact same shot, but 5 different versions of the same shot. And then you'll be able to go in there and take a look at clarity, which one's slightly sharper, which one, whatever it is, and then select that as your final. So I don't know. Where's the beef?
But this is just first version, so that very well may be features that will come. You would think that they would just incorporate that in the first version.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like something that everyone would want. Hopefully they'll add it, though. I mean, the community seems to be pretty excited about this.
Yeah.
So this is good. I think it's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
The requirement of Adobe CC, I mean, that's kind of a bummer, but I get it. Yeah. And, realistically, we're all going to be at the mercy of Adobe at one point if we want to upgrade our industry standard software.
Yeah, no matter what. It just feels right now as a consumer product in comparison to a pro product. And it might turn pro in the next revision. So stay tuned, guys. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
So anyways, before we go any further, let's go ahead and hear from one of our sponsors.
Are you frustrated with slightly out of focus images when you know your autofocus spot was dead on? it's simply not your fault. From manufacturer to manufacturer, and even lens copy to lens copy, there are slight variances to the exact spot where light is being focused onto the sensor. Finally, there's a product that allows you to compensate for those variances and make sharper images immediately. Focus Pyramid, the autofocus lens calibration tool, is an absolute must for every photographer. If you want to make the sharpest images possible, then you need to take control over your camera's focusing system. With the Focus Pyramid, you can calibrate all of your lenses on your lunch break. The Focus Pyramid makes lens calibration quick and easy at an affordable price. So give your lenses a new lease on life and take your photography to the next level. Head over to focuspyramid.com/DPC and get an additional 10% off just for being a show listener.
Okay, so we're back. And this past week was the big NAB show out in Las Vegas, the National Broadcasters Association. That's always a big show for, the video end of our business.
Right.
And a lot of announcements this week, but a lot of the high-end pro stuff that's not really specific to you guys. So we don't really want to dive hard into that.
Yeah,
but
right.
the overall theme is definitely 4K video.
Yeah.
Every camera
4K.
that came out, 4K, shooting. Hard drives, fast hard drives that can handle 4K video. So, this really is where the technology is going. It's definitely moving to the 4K. The TVs that we're going to have in our homes are going to be 4K.
Yeah, they showed a Sony. It's called an A7s, and it's a mirrorless, but it is full frame, and it's doing 4K. But what's really amazing is the light sensitivity that they're getting out of this. They dropped the sensor down to 12 megapixels, which I understand. It makes sense. They really need to do that to be able to get this. But they're getting up to 409,000 ISO.
Yeah,
and we're going to run this video as we're talking about this. And when you look at this, it is just insanity. How this they're showing a scene of a campfire, let's say on a beach, and it's dusk. There's no light at all.
You barely see the campfire.
It's
burning, but it's not like it's super bright,
And they keep cranking this up. They keep cranking it up, 1600, 3200, 6400, and on, all the way up to 4009. Or 409,000 ISO. And all of a sudden, this completely dark scene it's like dusk, like the sun was
dusk. You can see all the detail in the ground and the sky and everything. It really is quite amazing. I mean, if you look at that video in, full screen, 1080, and really look close at it, I mean, probably when you get into the high ISO, you're going to start seeing noise. But the fact that you can do it at all is amazing to me. I mean, anybody that's going to shoot a nighttime scene like this is going to have some form of external light source.
Yeah.
To light the subject or what have you.
Not
so
with
you're going to be adjusting for that anyway.
Right.
But yeah, this is really cool. I mean, the idea that they lowered the megapixels makes a lot of sense. They got, rather than having more megapixels, there's less megapixels, but they're bigger and higher quality. That's how they're able to get the sensitivity.
And that's what we're all looking for today, right? Big, high quality megapixels, not massive amounts of megapixels. It just doesn't matter if it's low quality, small, tiny megapixels. It doesn't help.
Right. What's interesting, though, is this camera, yes, shoots 4K, but only to an external recorder. Right. So you cannot shoot 4K video to the built-in memory card. You can only shoot just full HD. So that is a limitation, I suppose, but maybe not. I mean, it depends on what your subject is. I mean, if you're out and about or you're at a wedding, I mean, are you going to be shooting 4K while you're standing out on the dance floor?
Right.
It's probably not necessary at this point.
Yeah.
So, shooting full HD would probably be fine, and I bet that video quality looks really good.
Oh my God. Yeah, if it's doing what it's doing at 4K at this type of ISO, could you imagine just simple HD must be pretty amazing. As far as price, guys, we really don't know. We're speculating probably $3,000, $4,000. We're not really sure. Don't quote us on that at all because there's really no guidance as of yet. But just
it wasn't
kind of
announced.
thinking it. So. It's not announced. So this is what we're guessing. We'll see what happens. We'll keep you informed because 4K is where it's at. We'll be talking about it probably for the entire year.
Yeah. Well, they're speculating release this summer, so we'll see. Hopefully we'll get a price announcement soon.
I mean, camera phones are coming out 4K now. It's just stupid.
It's crazy.
It's gonna be nuts.
Yeah, but I guarantee you, they don't have the pixel sensitivity that. This
the
thing
size of a pinhead compared to a full frame 35 millimeter sensor.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. Anyways, Nikon recalls 14,000 power shots.
Canon.
I mean, excuse me, Canon recalls 14,000 power shots. So, oh my God! Now
to dig the other side, people.
Yeah, Nikon. We've been talking about Nikon recall, the D600, constant. They didn't recall it, but they're saying that there's problems, and they're going to go and fix them all and whatever. Now Canon has got the problem, but they're actually, I don't know what is going on, right? What's going on with QC lately?
Yeah, well, apparently this particular power shot, I mean, it's a power shot, guys, so we know a lot of you probably aren't running around with power shots shooting your weddings, but it's more the point of what's happening within the industry and within the QC. And this is kind of, it's kind of a sad thing. I mean, the rubber that they're using in the eyepiece is actually causing skin irritation. Yeah. So, you got to send it back and they replace it or what have you with a different compound or something. I don't know, but it's kind of crazy. We're going to have a link in the show notes where you can go read more about this if you happen to have the camera. It's model SX50HS.
Right.
So if you do happen to have one of those, you can go get the information from our site, send it in for the warranty work. But what is also interesting is Canon is reportedly charging customers for out-of-warranty repairs on known issues with bodies and lenses.
Yeah, we were talking about last week, guys, about the cold weather issue,
right?
Sub-freezing issue where the high-end $4,000-$5,000 body is having a problem with the autofocus.
Yeah.
So the reports are Canon is charging $250 to $450 to fix this. What's going on with that?
On known issues. I mean, this is really starting to move into dangerous territory. Yep. If Canon is not going to be honest with its customer base, especially the pro base, and say, yeah, we know there's a problem, and we're going to be stand up, and we're going to fix these, even if your lens or body is out of warranty, because this is the level of service that we need to be able to deliver. They're really going to be going down a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's not good.
Nikon is making good on those D600s.
Exactly.
And they said even if it's out of warranty, they're going to fix it or replace it.
What I don't understand here is you're dealing with a small populace that has a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 body. I mean, Canon just needs to step up and say, listen, if you have this, we're going to fix it. We're not going to charge you. And that's it, just like Nikon did. Nikon's, they're getting hit hard. D600s, they were everywhere. I mean, they're going to be paying a lot of money on repairs here. Come on, Canon.
But you know what? It's going to keep them at the top of the list as the go-to camera.
Exactly.
If Canon really treads down this road and the consumer base feels like their customer base feels like they're getting ripped off for repairs and stuff, they're just not going to buy Canon anymore. They're going to make the switch or whatever. I mean, the problem is it's hard to make the switch. If you've invested thousands of dollars in glass, you can't just switch over to Nikon easily. You've got to get rid of all that and try and get at least some of your money back, and then go spring for a whole bunch more money to switch over to Nikon. So,
we'll see what happens. Get it together, Ken. Follow Nikon's guidance here. So moving forward, Apple. We talked about Apple weeks past, and we've been talking about Samsung and how Samsung's just been very innovative with their advertising, with what they're doing, and Apple just seems to be falling short. We've been saying this for quite some time. Well, well, something comes out in email that was talked about early in 2013. It finally kind of surfaced, which is kind of interesting, but it's saying what we've said, right?
Yeah. So Phil Schiller, he's the Apple's head of marketing. So he had this apparently a very tense email conversation back and forth with the ad agency about how Apple's ads just really haven't been hitting the mark. Early 2013.
Right.
And basically they're comparing themselves, of course, to Samsung. And Samsung, like Joe said, has really been doing it. They've had some really good ads come out and stuff. And especially their tag, right, was the next big thing is already here.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly.
basically, that's kind of a dig on Apple's whole thing. Oh, wait, there's one more thing. And it was
Right.
always like the next big thing, the next cutting edge thing.
Right.
So, Samsung's kind of slamming Apple with that. And believe me, there's no love lost between these two companies either,
No.
So,
Not even a little
yeah,
bit. So it's I find it interesting because as I said in the past, it feels like the company has, instead of moving forward, they're kind of just status quoing. And I like how he's blaming the ad agency, and then in the letter, the ad agency is blaming him or them or Apple for not allowing them to be as creative as they want to be and restraining them. And he's like, "Are you kidding me? We're not restricting you to anything. Go make something good because we're getting pummeled here by Samsung's ad." So, recently they came up with the ad where it was the, Dead Poet Society type of ad.
For iPads,
Robin Williams is doing the voiceover, and it's a very thinkers ad, I call it. A very thinkers, you sit back and you're like, wow, this is really, this is cool. Well, that ad is a really great ad, but it's for the thinker. It's not for the everyday guy that wants to go buy an iPad. Whereas the Samsung ads, those ads they're funny, they're clever, they're witty.
They're hitting home with a broader base.
A huge base.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? You're making good ads, but you're focused. So that I want to kind of tie into what do we do as photographers? Who are we advertising to? Who is our market? And are we conveying what we do, who we are, what can we provide to them, to the right populace, to the right market? Or are we niching it? Are we only going to a small segment? How are we doing it? Because if we're doing it like Samsung, we're getting a lot of work. If we're doing it like Apple is doing it now, we're probably not getting a lot of work. It's something that we need to change, right?
Well, right. Are you guys falling short with your message? Is your message resonating? Is the services in the products that you offer, does that resonate with your client base?
Right.
That's really a tough question.
And who
Without
are you
having
targeting?
Hundreds
right?
of thousands of dollars to pay for, a top tier ad agency.
Right.
We're all kind of just winging it on our own,
Right.
But that's where you really have to look at it. Look at yourselves, look at what you're doing and saying, can I do better? Can I connect? Am I connecting with my client base? Are they calling me? Are the emails coming in through the website?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's really it's good to reflect.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And you could just see it from big companies to small and kind of look at it as far as what you're doing. You definitely have to hit the right demographic, because if you're not hitting the demographic right, it doesn't really matter what your message is, like Apple's doing here. They're hitting the wrong demographic with this thinker type of ad. And where Samsung, they're hitting the populace. They're hitting everyone. So you just need to keep that in your mind when you're putting together those, let's say, keyword things like through Google, like AdSense, or going through Facebook and doing a Facebook ad. Who are you hitting? Make sure you're hitting the right market, because if you're not, your message is going to be falling on deaf ears.
Yeah, and then you're going to become frustrated saying, "Oh, these marketing platforms don't work." When in fact they do work. You just have to work them, the right way.
Exactly. All right, Trev.
Yes, we're done. We got to get out of here. We're pushing the envelope here with time. So if people want to connect with you outside of the show, what's the best way for them to reach you?
You can reach me through Twitter, and that's @JosephChristina, and that's Christina without an H.
Great. And you can connect with me on Twitter. It's @TrevorCurrent.
All right, everybody, we are out of here. You can get all the show notes from this episode by visiting digitalphotographycafe.com/149. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DPhotoCafe. And we will see you next week.
You've been watching the Digital Photography Cafe show with Trevor Curran and Joseph Christina. Subscribe to our YouTube channel with any compatible device by visiting youtube.com/DPhotoCafe. Be sure to subscribe to our audio feed through iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Xbox Music apps, or through RSS. Visit digitalphotographycafe.com for show notes and to connect with your hosts.